Hi, my name is Eric Swanson, and I'm the Director of the Global Connections Leadership Community with Leadership Network. Global missions is changing. A couple years ago, I was walking down Pearl Street Mall here in Boulder, Colorado, and dropped into a store that has a lot of really cool maps, and it's kind of an antique document store. And came upon this map called The Distribution of Christianity in 1886. And it had where the most Christians lived, Protestants, Catholics, and Orthodox, and they're all centered in the North and in the West. That was the world. We looked at the number of Christians in Africa and in China and India and in the Middle East. There were just a handful of believers then in 1886. It was interesting too, though. In 1885, 86 was the beginning of the modern missionary movement. And so you had the 100 students that signed the Princeton Pledge, vowing to go anywhere. You had C.T. Studd in the Cambridge 7 setting out for China. You had people going to Africa and to Korea and to India and all over the globe. And what they did their job in their generation. How do I know that? Is because 100, 120, 130 years later, today, the centers of Christianity are no longer in the North and in the West, but they're in the South and in the East. It's Africa, it's Latin America, it's China, where the gospel is just growing leaps and bounds. Just to demonstrate, the first missionary conference in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1910 had about 500 delegates from the United States, about 500 from Canada, and about 40 from all the other countries. By contrast, this year's Lausanne Conference, or the 2010 Lausanne Conference in South Africa, they had delegates that represented the percentage of Christians in their country. So the U.S. only had 12% of the delegates. And 88% of the Christian delegates came from other countries of the world. I think when we think about global strategy, when we think about global missions, there's some trends that we need to take into consideration. And the first is just globalization. Like you, I carry a smartphone in my pocket. Most likely, the phone that I use was designed in the United States, manufactured in China, using parts from Malaysia and from Singapore and from maybe Brazil. And globalization is the interconnectedness of people and goods and services. The second, and I think it's just the world that we live in today. Many people in your churches, if you were to poll how many were traveled out of the country this week, many hands will go up. People will go through multiple passports in a lifetime because travel and international travel is just the way of life. And so Christians are already, apart from the 1.5 million that go on short-term mission trips every year, Christians are going to the world already. That should somehow inform our strategy. A second trend is almost the opposite of that, and that's called urbanization, that the peoples of the world are moving to the cities of the world. That as of May 2007, more people live in cities than in rural areas, and that should somehow inform our strategies. A few weeks ago, I was down in Dallas, and somebody gave me a little research that was done in Dallas, and in the last 10 years, 1 million people from other countries have moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. They speak some 239 different languages, about a third of those from Africa. And 32% of homes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, English isn't even the language that's spoken. So somehow urbanization should inform our global strategy. The third thing is technology. Technology is a big trend, and what it does, technology simply makes something that we want to do. It allows us to do it with greater ease or greater efficiency. A great evangelistic technology of a generation ago was the Jesus film, birthed in the mid-70s. And for years, missionaries would lug portable projectors on their backs or in jeeps and set up a bed sheet and show the Gospel of Luke to people in a language the first time they've seen any film in their own language. And it was shown literally to millions and millions of people, with over 230 some million people indicating decisions for Christ. And what's that technology today? That's going to be the breakthrough technology to impact a new generation for missions. I think too, Alan Roxburgh says that we live in this time of liminality. Liminality is when what used to work no longer works, but what will work has not yet been discovered. In many churches' missions programs, they simply an iteration of what they've done the year before. We did this, let's try to do a little bit more. Gee, our budget's less, let's cut down. Rather than rethinking how differently the world is structured today and how that should inform our mission strategy. A couple of questions that keep coming up is the first one is, with the gospel growing in every place almost but the U.S., what's the role of a Western missionary? The second thing is, what can we do to pass on a missions passion, global mission passion, to the next generation of leaders? I think a lot of these answers will not come from within ourselves, from sitting in a board meeting in a missions office or in a meeting room at church, but I think we need the nations of the world to inform us of how we can best serve our role. The role of the Western missionary is not over, but we need to collaborate, and we need to partner with people, with believers all around the world to help inform what our strategy should be. That's going to be a time of mutuality and partnering and accountability, and we'll be like Home Depot. You can do it, and we can help. I think also, it has something to do with unreached peoples. Austin Stone Church in Austin, Texas, is led by a wonderful missions pastor, Joey Shaw, a very young guy, but he and his team have challenged 100 people to go to the unreached people groups in the next 2 years. And he's got 90 people that have signed up in the process. He said, when we get that 100, we're going after another 100. I think technology also has something to do with the answer of how we approach this problem. Recently, I've been exposed to something called the Global Media Strategy, GreatCommission2020.com, and it's 100 websites in different languages of the world that identifies people that are searching for God. And almost 2 million people today do some type of search for God on the internet. And with this technology, it allows really people to indicate that they've received Christ. Somewhere between 40 and 50,000 people today on the internet indicate that they've come into a relationship with Christ, and about 5,000 a day request follow-up. And somehow that use of technology should inform our strategy. So here's the deal. The world's changing, and we need to change with it. Peter Drucker had a wonderful quote. He said, any time an organization fails to change at the rate of the world around it, that organization is doomed to failure. And global missions should not be doomed to failure. Global missions needs to recognize the current realities today and take advantage of those so that God's glory can be lived out and displayed in every place on earth.